Hey everybody, I'm here with Chelly Herren. She is, I don't know what your official title is actually, a leader
COO.
over at COO, thank you. At the Hyland Group up in Prescott, Arizona. Are you Prescott or Prescott? Oh, how do you pronounce it?
Prescott. If you're from
Prescott.
Prescott, you say it Prescott, not Prescott. Sorry, I said it wrong. It's Prescott, not Prescott.
Okay, gotcha. That's a much debated Arizonan thing, I feel like.
Yeah, that's right.
We've been working with Shay for about 2.5 years, maybe even three at this point. Um, and her processes are very unique because she does all of her transaction management inside of Follow Boss, which has taken a lot of setup, and we've built some pretty cool forms and tools that allow her to do that. She was doing it at a pretty high level before the automation, but I feel like the automation has definitely helped um, kind of automate that process, obviously, and streamline that process of having the agents get that information into the field. So let's start there, Shay, with how that's working and how you are managing those transactions inside of Follow Up Boss, even when it's not really built for that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give a quick overview. I'm actually gonna turn my video on and off really quick because my camera's having an issue for some reason. Okay, there we go. I don't look as muffled, maybe. Yeah, so just a quick overview. So when I took over this role, came out of sales in 2020 and took over this role to help run the team. I looked at all of the transaction checklists that everybody inside the team, the two TCs and then a listing coordinator were using. And I was like, okay, there's got to be like a better way rather than jumping around to all these different softwares. So I automations, like the original automations for Follow Up Boss had just been released. And I remembered going to like a webinar and was like, okay, this is so cool. Like we could take a checklist and we could make it like maybe a stage-based automation. So as soon as a client becomes a pending buyer, we could launch their whole checklist. So I'm just going to play around with this. So I sat around one night, built all the transaction checklists that the team used into different action plans in Follow Up Boss, and then got the little basic automation set up. And so that was like version one. That was like our beta. And we were able to get off of Brokerment at the time with that system. And then over time, we've evolved. We met you guys, and some of the things that you guys have put in place for us are like total game changers. So the initial system is very like deals based and Follow Up Boss. We use stages, deals. Um, we have always worked off of a Google Drive system, so we use that to house all our documents because Follow Up Boss is not very good at housing documents. And then our broker has a completely separate document management system. So the piece that we were missing that Bara really helped us put in place was an intake form. So you guys built us a custom intake form with, I think it's Retool. So we can take all that data that we collect from a contract process, and instead of just putting it in the custom fields of Follow Up Boss and then entering it into SkySlope and then entering it into like maybe a contract checklist or whatever the system was, looked exactly like before. It's hard to actually quite remember what we were doing before. We now just put it in that one place. So the intake form gets filled out and the custom fields in Follow Up Boss get filled out. The deal gets created in Follow Up Boss. The Google Drive folder gets created. And I'm trying to think, there's a PDF that generates that's like a contract checklist. Then over time, working with Josh and Davis and trying to figure out, other ways that we could save time, we have integrated in now an AI contract reader. So contract gets uploaded, the contract gets read, and then the fields get all filled out. So that's been a huge game changer for us, and really probably shaved off like 20 minutes on average each of our transactions. So now our team is running 400 transactions with two TCs,
Totally.
roughly.
Wow. Okay. And so other than the time and money that you're, kind of saving by not having an outside transaction management platform and also using our form systems that we've built for you, what do you feel is the best benefits within the system? Because I feel like there's a lot of kind of locking to the rails that's happening with the forms. And have you seen that within your team as well?
Yeah, for sure. Like, so basically, I mean, like number one, everybody has all the same data. Like, as soon as that form pushes through, it goes into Google Drive, it goes into the deals in Follow Up Boss, it goes into the custom fields. And so, like, our agent who's running the transaction, our TC who's involved in the transaction, in some cases, our listing coordinator, if it was a seller, Jeff's assistant, our team lead's assistant, knows what the situation is. Like everybody has the same information all in one place. And not just is that efficient, but it's also so highly collaborative because then everybody is working off of the same data, if that makes sense. And there's not so much like, well, there was a typo on the close date in the SkySlope system. And then, in Follow Up Boss, there's a different date, and that has created tasks to fire off wrong or something like that. Like, for the most part, it's just consolidated all the data into like one point of entry and just so much faster and more collaborative. Does that
Yeah,
answer your question?
yeah, definitely. And I guess a lot of teams and team leads and COOs like yourself that are trying to figure out these problems, it's super intimidating, right? To be able to innovate. We were, before we started recording here, we're kind of talking about the amount of time that it takes for that creative process to actually come to fruition, to create something that's actually useful.
Yeah.
What, as somebody that's, created something that is extraordinarily unique in transaction management inside of Follow Up Boss and finding a specific solution for your team on your own in the manual process, and then with our help as well in development, what's some advice that you would give somebody that's probably in like the first couple steps of that process that is starting to become discouraged with the idea of like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out an all-encompassing holistic solution and process for my team to kind of save time and bring efficiency to our processes?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. And I've shared with you before that it is intimidating, even for people like me who've been in real estate operations for most of my career. So, which is going on, I don't know, 20 years. It's crazy to say that now. But I would say a couple different things. One, I was kind of a fly on the wall in a couple different communities. The Fault Boss community, I was like in some ops communities. I did a little bit of like I'd see someone who's really powerful in real estate operations, and I'd reach out to them and be like, "Hey, would you do a call with me? I have some questions for you." And I would just literally ask them like, "How do you handle this in your business? How do you handle this in your business?" So that gave me a lot of ideas early in my role here, like 5 years ago. And then I started breaking down like, okay, where do we have bottlenecks? Where, like, if like in my mind, we always had like a growth goal. And so I wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to have a strong platform to grow from. And in order to do that, I knew that we needed to have like really lean, efficient operations. And so I just started sitting down and looking at each of our processes. Like transaction management is obviously a huge one. And we were using a lot of different software and we were entering things a lot of different places. And so I thought to myself, okay, this is inefficient. So how do we make it more efficient? And that was like a really quick litmus test. And then also with our agents, I did a podcast about this with Ethan Butte from the Follow Up Boss Team OS podcast. But we also are always, I'm also thinking like, okay, so is this going to be easy for agents to use? Because if it's not easy for them to use, like having an agent go in and fill out an intake form is hard. They don't like it. It's hard for them. They have trouble finding time to write a contract if they're super busy. So having them do a bunch of data entry was not an option for me. So
Hmm.
then I knew I wanted the staff to do it. And if I wanted the staff to do it, then how am I going to make it efficient and easy for them? And so I would probably just suggest like breaking down some of your key processes and how much is it costing your company to do those things? How efficient are those processes? How well are they working? And then try to identify pain points and use technology to solve those. And you guys are so great about brainstorming those conversations. So if you can identify the pain points, that's great. a tool that I heard you talk about on one of your webinars a few weeks ago. Sounds like a fantastic tool where you can type in, kind of give an overview of what I think it is, like some of your problems or how your tech stack works. I can't remember exactly what you said about the tool, but having something like that that can help you kind of map out things, that's also another good place to start because, like, for instance, mapping out our whole client process was really so I identified that there was a need with the transaction issue, but then I had every staff member sit in a room and say, okay, from the moment you come in as a lead and get through the process of being called by your agent and develop that relationship and go under contract, what
Mm.
are all the steps in that whole process? What emails do they get? What tasks need to happen by which person? We mapped that all out first. So we all knew what all those tasks were. And then we tried to figure out ways that we could make things more efficient. Like, well, if you're already saying this in an email, does this person need to say this in an email? And so just trying to get as much efficiency in place as we could.
Yeah, totally. I think the starting with the mind map is definitely the best idea to kind of figure out where your tech stack is and how all those things are connected. And
Yes,
from there, you can identify the gaps and kind of do an audit of, hey, this process is happening manually every time we're going under contract. We have to put these
yes.
documents in 18 other places in these fields, and like we
And I
have,
saw that our TCs had to have like 6 tabs open in order to
yeah,
manage the transaction. I was like, oh
that's
my
not
God,
good.
really? Like, this
Yeah,
is too crazy. So that was like a big sign. Like, I know we can do this better. And intake forms in general for our business are so fantastic because I think they saw some stat that like real estate agents have to get into like 18 different apps to do their job every day with MLS and lock boxes and showing time and all the other things. Like, let's just keep things simple for them. So keeping things as consolidated and simple as possible is what my goal has always been.
yeah, absolutely. I think the three categories that I think our tools are really geared to help with. The first one being agent adoptability, right? Is it bringing value to the agents? Because, like you said earlier, if the agents aren't going to use it, we could build them a whole spaceship. If they're not going to fly it, then it's just going to be
Totally.
sitting there looking pretty.
And if
Um,
it's not easy for them to use, that's the other thing is I've just found that if it's not like in their face and easy to use, it's beautiful to build. And people who are systems people like you and I think it's so cool, but they won't remember to use it.
Totally. And the user friendliness is something that we definitely have to be very mindful of. But at the same time, it has to balance out with the value that it's bringing to your reporting and the value that it's
Yes.
bringing to your processes of, hey, is this going to push the needle a little bit to
Yes,
streamline these processes and make it quicker and lock it to the rails so we know that we have data integrity every single time. I'm
for sure.
curious, after those three of agent value, process value, and reporting value, is there any other categories that you would find super important when considering things like this?
Yeah, it's funny that you just say that because I was just having a thought. So I come from a marketing background. Marketing and ops have been like my whole career. And in marketing, typically, for instance, digital marketing, let's say, all, team owners or stakeholders in whatever lead gen opportunity you have are going to say, what's going to be the return? Like, if I spend $1,000 on new leads, how much money in commissions can we bring in? Like, what is the return? And I like to think of ops that way too, and that helps me prioritize things. So, there's so many great systems and processes and foundational tools that operators can put in place. I think sometimes we're guilty of making things more complex than they need to be. So, the way that I really use like my framework for all of that is like what is going to bring a ROI to the company. So for instance, the transaction management system, it was kind of laborious. It took a little bit of time to get in place. It took time to train staff, but because of that, we've been able to keep our costs under control and our operations really lean. And that has saved us money of like a whole nother TC salary, for instance. And so
Totally.
that's I just try to evaluate on like the points you mentioned, and then in addition to that, what is the return or how is it going to bring value, perceived value, or money to the company?
Totally. And I think that is one of the one of the questions we get the most is what's the ROI on this project you're building? Like how do we know that this is going to directly correlate with, our revenue and how much it, and I guess my answer usually is because it is a little more abstract, right? Of like,
Yeah,
you don't really understand how that's going to actually have a return on investment. But if you think about scaling, it's if you don't have these processes in place and you want to grow and you want to, continue to become the company that you want to become, if you don't have these processes in place, then you're kind of stuck there and you need to keep hiring that's like copies of the same people that you have over and
for
over
sure.
again. And so
Totally.
I think that's the best way to kind of describe the ROI because it is a little abstract in terms of like saving time and how that time equals money. But when you
Yeah.
think about scale, it makes it a way easier to think about.
Well, for sure. And I think that that's a really good point because, like, for instance, when I jumped into this role and Jeff was like, well, I want to grow from 5 to 15 agents, I picture it like a scaffolding. Like, if you put a scaffolding up at the side of a tall building and you build that scaffolding up because you're like trying to get closer to the top and trying to grow,
Mm,
then you load people onto that scaffolding, it's not going to hold if it's just like one skinny little row that goes all the way to the top and you're trying to put 10 or 15 people on top of that scaffolding. So you have to like build strong at the base, make sure that you have good foundations in place, and then slowly build up from there. And then you can start loading more people on to, help you grow and get closer to the top. But you can't just, start with a tiny little operational foundation and then try to grow into 20 or 30 agents because you'll really be in a bad spot and it'll cause a ton of turnover and the agents won't be happy. So there's not always a direct ROI to everything that we do, but if we're putting foundations in place, a lot of time it's to prepare for scale.
totally. Awesome, Shay. Well, I know we're a little bit over time here, so I'll let you go, but I really appreciate your time and I'm excited for people to watch this and understand what you've done, how you've been successful, and hopefully get some inspiration about not getting that writer's block, for lack of better terms, when they're trying to build these processes. So really appreciate your
Yes.
time.
The creativity, the time blocking, like we were talking about, those are all game changers and trying to figure out how to use technology to make your real estate team or business stronger.
Totally. Well, thank you, Shay. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care.